Master Chief Sarah Rodriguez had seen it all in her 15 years as a Navy SEAL. She had crawled through mud in Afghanistan, jumped from planes over hostile territory, and led countless missions that most people could never imagine. But nothing had prepared her for this moment. The morning sun cast long shadows across the training facility in Coronado, California. Sarah stood at the edge of the shooting range, watching the newest group of SEAL candidates struggle through their marksmanship test. These young men had already survived months of the most brutal training the military could offer. Only the strongest, smartest, and most determined made it this far. "Keep your breathing steady," Sarah called out to a sweating recruit whose hands shook as he aimed his rifle. "The target isn't going anywhere," Sarah called. The recruit nodded and tried again. His shot hit closer to the center this time. Sarah made a note on her clipboard. Training these future SEALs was serious business. Every skill they learned here could mean the difference between life and death in real combat. As the morning wore on, Sarah noticed something unusual. One of the recruits was shooting with incredible accuracy. Every bullet hit the exact center of the target. She had been training SEALs for 5 years, and she had never seen anyone shoot this well on their first try at this level. She walked over to get a better look at the recruit. He was smaller than most of the others, maybe 5 feet 8 inches tall, with a slight build. His movements were smooth and confident. When he raised his rifle, there was no hesitation, no wasted motion, just aim, breathe, and fire. "What's your name, recruit?" Sarah asked, standing behind him. The figure didn't turn around immediately. "Recruit Johnson, Master Chief." The voice was higher than Sarah expected. She frowned. Something felt different about this recruit, but she couldn't put her finger on what it was. In her experience, the best snipers often came in unexpected packages. Some of the deadliest shooters she had known were quiet, smaller people who others might underestimate. "Where did you learn to shoot like that, Johnson?" "My grandfather taught me, Master Chief. Started when I was 8 years old." Sarah nodded. That made sense. Many of the best military marksmen had started young, learning from family members who understood the importance of patience and practice. She watched as Johnson lined up another shot. The bullet found its target perfectly once again. The training day continued with obstacle courses, swimming tests, and hand-to-hand combat practice. Sarah noticed that Johnson excelled at everything, but seemed to avoid the other recruits during break times. Most of the candidates had formed small groups, sharing stories about their backgrounds and supporting each other through the tough training. Johnson sat alone, eating quietly and studying training manuals. "That one's different," said Instructor Martinez, joining Sarah as they watched the recruits during lunch. "Been watching Johnson all week. Never seen shooting like that." "Different how?" Sarah asked. "Hard to say. Just something about the way Johnson moves. Very careful. Very precise. Like someone who's used to being watched closely." Sarah had learned to trust her fellow instructors' instincts. Martinez had been training SEALs longer than anyone else on the base. If he noticed something unusual, it was worth paying attention to. That afternoon brought the most challenging part of SEAL training, the underwater navigation test. Recruits had to swim underwater for long distances while carrying full equipment, then surface at exact locations marked by floating buoys. Many strong candidates failed this test because it required not just physical strength, but also mental toughness and spatial awareness. Sarah stood on the dock, stopwatch in hand, as the recruits prepared to enter the water. One by one, they disappeared beneath the surface of the dark ocean. She would time each one and mark their positions when they surfaced. Johnson was the last to enter the water. Sarah started her stopwatch and waited. The other recruits began surfacing at various points around the marked area. Some hit their targets exactly. Others came up too far to the left or right and would need additional training. But Johnson didn't surface. Sarah checked her stopwatch. 3 minutes. 4 minutes. 5 minutes. Even the strongest SEALs couldn't hold their breath underwater this long, while swimming with full gear. "Where is Johnson?" Martinez asked, joining her at the edge of the dock. Sarah scanned the water. No sign of the recruit anywhere. Other instructors began launching boats to search the area. This was every trainer's worst nightmare: losing a recruit during an exercise. "There!" shouted one of the other recruits, pointing toward a buoy that was much farther from shore than any of them were supposed to swim. A figure broke the surface of the water near the distant marker. It was Johnson, right on target, but in a location that should have been impossible to reach in the time that had passed. Sarah and Martinez looked at each other with surprise and concern. Either Johnson had misunderstood the exercise completely, or this recruit possessed abilities that were far beyond what they had seen from anyone else. When Johnson swam back to shore, Sarah was waiting with questions. "Johnson, you were supposed to surface at the red buoy, not the yellow one." "I understood the exercise correctly, Master Chief. The red buoy was the easy target. I chose the yellow one because it was more challenging." Sarah stared at the recruit. "You chose? This isn't about choosing your own level of difficulty. This is about following orders and meeting specific objectives." Number 4. "Yes, Master Chief, I apologize." But Sarah could see in Johnson's eyes that there was no real apology there. This recruit had deliberately made the exercise harder and had succeeded at a level that seemed almost impossible. That evening, Sarah sat in her office reviewing the day's training reports. Johnson's file lay open on her desk. The basic information was all there: age, hometown, previous military experience, test scores. Everything looked normal, but Sarah's instincts told her there was more to this recruit than what appeared on paper. She had seen hundreds of candidates come through SEAL training. Some were naturally gifted athletes. Others succeeded through pure determination and hard work. A few had special talents that made them stand out, but Johnson was different in a way she couldn't quite understand. The next morning brought weapons training with live ammunition. This was always the most serious day of the training cycle. Real bullets, real targets, and real consequences if anyone made a mistake. Safety protocols were strict, and every instructor was on high alert. Sarah positioned herself at the center of the firing range where she could observe all the recruits. They would be shooting at targets placed at increasing distances, testing not just accuracy but also the ability to adjust for wind, lighting, and other environmental factors. The first group of recruits took their positions. Sarah gave the command to begin firing. The sound of gunshots echoed across the range as bullets flew toward their targets. Most shots were good, some were excellent, and a few missed the target entirely. Then it was Johnson's turn. The recruit moved to the firing line with the same smooth confidence Sarah had noticed before. The rifle seemed to fit perfectly in Johnson's hands, like it belonged there. Sarah watched through her binoculars as Johnson lined up the first shot. The bullet hit the exact center of the target. The second shot hit the same spot. The third shot actually split the second bullet in half. Sarah had never seen anything like it. She lowered her binoculars and stared at Johnson in disbelief. This level of accuracy wasn't just exceptional for a SEAL recruit. It was exceptional for anyone. "Johnson," she called out. Front and center, the recruit jogged over and stood at attention. "Yes, Master Chief." "Where exactly did you say you learned to shoot?" "With my grandfather, Master Chief. He taught me hunting and target shooting." "What did your grandfather do for a living?" For the first time, Sarah saw Johnson hesitate. It was just a moment, but it was there. A tiny pause before answering. "He was a farmer, Master Chief." Sarah nodded, but she didn't believe it. Farmers might be good shots, but they didn't produce marksmen who could split bullets at 100 yards. That kind of skill came from somewhere else entirely. The rest of the day passed without incident. But Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that Johnson was hiding something important. During the evening meal, she watched the recruit from across the dining hall. Johnson still sat alone, still avoided conversation with the other candidates. After dinner, Sarah decided to take a walk around the base to clear her head. The California evening was warm, and the ocean breeze carried the scent of salt water. She had always found the sound of waves relaxing, especially when she needed to think through a problem. As she walked past the equipment storage building, she heard a noise inside. It was after hours, and the building should have been empty. Sarah moved quietly toward the sound, her military instincts taking over. Through a window, she could see a figure inside the building, moving between the equipment racks. Someone was going through the weapons storage area without authorization. This was a serious security violation. Sarah moved to the entrance and carefully opened the door. She could see the intruder more clearly now. It was Johnson, examining one of the sniper rifles used for advanced training. "Freeze," Sarah commanded, her hand moving to her sidearm. "Put your hands where I can see them." Johnson turned slowly, hands raised. In the dim light of the storage room, Sarah could see the recruit's face clearly for the first time without a helmet or other gear casting shadows. And in that moment, everything clicked into place. Johnson wasn't a he at all. Johnson was a woman. Sarah stared in shock as she realized what she was seeing. The slight build, the higher voice, the careful way of moving around the other recruits, the exceptional skills that seemed to come from somewhere beyond normal military training. "You're a woman," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. Johnson nodded slowly. "Yes, Master Chief. Women aren't allowed in SEAL training." "How did you get here? Who authorized this?" "Nobody authorized it," Johnson replied quietly. "I got here the same way everyone else did. I passed all the tests, met all the requirements, and earned my place." Sarah's mind raced. If Johnson had somehow made it through the initial selection process without anyone discovering her true identity, it meant she had not only completed some of the most physically and mentally demanding tests in the military, but had done so while hiding a secret that could have ended her military career immediately. "What's your real name?" "Jessica Johnson. And everything else in my file is true. I really did grow up learning to shoot with my grandfather. I really did serve in other military units before applying for SEAL training. The only thing I changed was letting people assume I was male." Sarah looked at Jessica standing there in the dim storage room, hands still raised, and felt a mixture of anger and admiration. Anger because rules existed for important reasons, and Jessica had broken some very serious ones. Admiration because the level of skill and determination it would take to succeed in SEAL training while maintaining such a deception was almost unimaginable. "You realize I have to report this," Sarah said. "I know. But I had to try. I had to prove that I could do everything the men can do. And do it just as well. You've already proven that. Your shooting scores are the highest we've ever recorded. Your physical test results are in the top 5% of all candidates. But that doesn't change the fact that you're not supposed to be here." Jessica lowered her hands slowly. "Master Chief, can I ask you something?" Sarah nodded. "If you had been born male, would you have tried to become a SEAL?" The question hit Sarah harder than she expected. She had always been proud of her role as one of the few women in military leadership positions, but she had never really considered what her path might have been if different opportunities had been available to her. "That's not the point," Sarah said finally. "Isn't it? You're one of the most respected military instructors on this base. You've trained hundreds of SEALs who have gone on to serve with distinction. You know better than anyone what it takes to succeed in this job. Do you really think it has anything to do with being male or female?" Sarah found herself unable to answer immediately. Everything she had observed over the past week suggested that Jessica was not just capable of succeeding as a SEAL, but might actually be one of the most naturally gifted candidates she had ever seen. "The rules exist for a reason," Sarah said, though her voice lacked its usual conviction. "The rules exist because people in the past made assumptions about what women could and couldn't do. Some of those assumptions were wrong." The two women stood in silence for several moments, the weight of the situation settling between them. Sarah knew she should immediately report Jessica's deception and remove her from the training program. It was the correct action according to military regulations and her responsibilities as an instructor, but something held her back. Maybe it was the memory of her own struggles to be taken seriously in a male-dominated field. Maybe it was the recognition of Jessica's exceptional abilities, or maybe it was simply the knowledge that sometimes the right thing to do wasn't necessarily the same as following the rules exactly as they were written. "You can't continue the training program," Sarah said finally. Jessica nodded, disappointment clear on her face. "I understand, but I'm not going to report this tonight. I need time to think about how to handle this situation properly." Jessica looked surprised. "Thank you, Master Chief. Don't thank me yet. I haven't decided what I'm going to do. Go back to your quarters and act normal. We'll figure out the next steps tomorrow." As Jessica left the storage building, Sarah remained behind, her mind spinning with questions about duty, fairness, and what it truly meant to serve her country with honor. She had built her career on following orders and maintaining discipline, but she had also always believed in recognizing exceptional ability wherever it appeared. The waves continued to crash against the shore outside, but their usually calming sound did nothing to quiet the storm of thoughts in Sarah's head. Tomorrow would bring decisions that could change both of their careers forever. Sarah barely slept that night. She kept thinking about Jessica's question. Would she have tried to become a SEAL if she had been born male? The honest answer was yes, and that knowledge made her decision even more difficult. When morning came, Sarah made a choice that surprised even herself. Instead of immediately reporting Jessica's deception, she decided to dig deeper into the recruit's background. If she was going to make a decision that could end both of their careers, she wanted to understand exactly who Jessica Johnson really was. Sarah's first stop was the records office. Using her security clearance, she accessed Jessica's complete military file. What she found was remarkable. Jessica had joined the Army at 18 and had served with distinction in multiple combat zones. Her marksmanship scores had always been exceptional, earning her recognition as one of the top snipers in her unit. She had been recommended for Special Forces training twice, but both applications had been denied because women were not allowed in those positions. After leaving the Army, Jessica had worked as a civilian contractor, providing security services in dangerous locations around the world. Her employer's reviews were glowing. One report described her as the most professionally competent security specialist we have ever employed, regardless of gender. But the most interesting part of Jessica's file was a classified section that Sarah almost missed. 3 years ago, Jessica had been involved in a mission in Syria that had gone terribly wrong. A convoy of aid workers had been ambushed by hostile forces, and Jessica had been the only security contractor to survive the initial attack. According to the official report, she had held off more than 20 enemy fighters for over 6 hours, using only a sniper rifle and limited ammunition, until rescue forces could arrive. Her actions had saved the lives of 12 civilians, including 2 children. The mission commander's report stated, Contractor Johnson displayed courage, tactical skill, and marksmanship ability that exceeded anything I have witnessed in 20 years of military service. Her actions were directly responsible for preventing what would have been a massacre of innocent civilians. Sarah leaned back in her chair, staring at the screen. This wasn't just someone who wanted to prove a point about gender equality. This was a genuine war hero who had been denied opportunities because of policies that had nothing to do with ability or courage. Her investigation was interrupted by a knock on her office door. Enter, she called out. Instructor Martinez walked in, looking concerned. We have a problem, Sarah. What kind of problem? Someone broke into the weapons storage last night. Security cameras caught a figure going through the sniper rifles, but we can't make out who it was. Base security is launching a full investigation. 2000. Sarah's heart sank. The cameras had caught Jessica in the storage room, which meant her secret would soon be discovered, whether Sarah reported it or not. Do we have any suspects? Sarah asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Not yet, but they're going to question all the recruits this morning. Anyone who can't account for their whereabouts last night will be under suspicion. After Martinez left, Sarah realized she was running out of time. She needed to talk to Jessica before the security investigation reached her. But first, she decided to make one more important phone call. Admiral Patterson's office, came a crisp voice from the other end of the line. This is Master Chief Rodriguez at Coronado. I need to speak with the Admiral about an urgent matter regarding SEAL training protocols. Admiral Patterson had been Sarah's commanding officer for 3 years. He was known for being tough but fair, and more importantly, he had always supported Sarah's efforts to improve training standards regardless of political pressure. Master Chief Rodriguez, the Admiral's voice came through clearly. What can I do for you? What can I do for you? Sir, I need to discuss a situation that has come up regarding gender integration in Special Forces training. I know this is a sensitive topic, but I believe we may be facing a test case that could set important precedents. There was a pause on the other end of the line. I see. Can you be more specific? Sarah took a deep breath. Sir, I have a recruit who has demonstrated exceptional abilities in all areas of SEAL training. This individual's skills exceed those of any candidate I have trained in 5 years. However, there are complications regarding this recruit's eligibility for the program. What kind of complications? Sir, I would prefer to discuss this in person. Can we arrange a meeting today? There was not Harley going side. Admiral Patterson agreed to see her that afternoon. Sarah hung up the phone knowing she was about to take a risk that could end her military career. But she also knew she couldn't live with herself if she destroyed Jessica's future without at least trying to find a better solution. Meanwhile, across the base, Jessica was going through her morning routine as if nothing had happened. She completed the physical training exercises, attended the classroom sessions on military tactics, and participated in team-building activities with the other recruits. But Sarah could see the tension in Jessica's movements. She knew that discovery was inevitable, and she was preparing herself for the consequences. During the lunch break, Sarah approached Jessica. I need to see you in my office after training today. Jessica nodded. Yes, Master Chief. And Johnson, Sarah added quietly, be ready to tell me everything. The complete truth about who you are and how you got here. That afternoon, Sarah found herself sitting across from Admiral Patterson in his spacious office overlooking the Pacific Ocean. The Admiral was a tall man in his 50s, with graying hair and sharp eyes that seemed to see everything. So, he said after Sarah had explained the situation, we have a female recruit who somehow made it through our screening process and has been outperforming male candidates in every area of training. Yes, sir. And sir, her background indicates she has already proven herself in real combat situations. She's not someone who's trying to make a political statement. She's someone who has earned the right to be here based on her abilities. Admiral Patterson stood up and walked to the window. Master Chief, you understand the position this puts us in. We have clear policies about women in combat roles. These policies exist because of decisions made at the highest levels of government. I understand that, sir. But I also understand that policies can change when we have evidence that they may not be serving their intended purpose. The Admiral turned back to face her. What exactly are you suggesting? Sir, I'm suggesting that we use this situation as an opportunity to gather real data about women's capabilities in Special Forces training. Instead of simply removing this recruit, what if we allowed her to complete the program under close observation? We could document everything and provide concrete evidence for future policy decisions. That's a very dangerous suggestion, Master Chief. If this became public before we were ready to handle it properly, the political fallout could be enormous. Sarah had expected this response. Sir, what's more dangerous? Taking calculated risks to ensure we're using all available talent to defend our country, or maintaining policies that might be preventing us from fielding the most effective military force possible? Admiral Patterson was quiet for several minutes, considering her words. Finally, he spoke. If we were to consider something like this, it would have to be handled very carefully. Complete secrecy, until we could present our findings to the appropriate authorities. Extensive documentation of every aspect of training and performance, and absolute assurance that this individual could maintain operational security. I believe she can, sir. She's already maintained secrecy for weeks under extremely challenging circumstances. I want to meet with this recruit personally before making any decisions. Can you arrange that? Yes, sir. And Master Chief, you understand that if this goes wrong, both of your careers are over. I understand, sir. That evening, Sarah met with Jessica in her office. She had decided to be completely honest about the situation. Johnson, I've spent the day investigating your background and discussing your situation with my commanding officer. Jessica sat up straighter, preparing for the worst. I know about Syria. I know about your combat record. I know exactly who you are and what you've accomplished. Master Chief, I can explain. You don't need to explain anything. Your record speaks for itself. But I need to know something from you. If you were given the opportunity to complete SEAL training officially, with full knowledge and approval from command, would you be willing to accept the additional scrutiny and pressure that would come with being a test case? Jessica stared at her in surprise. Are you saying that's a possibility? I'm saying that's what I'm trying to make happen. But it would mean that every move you make, every test you take, every training exercise you complete, would be documented and analyzed. You would be under constant pressure to prove not just that you belong here, but that women in general belong here. I can handle that pressure, Master Chief. It would also mean that if you fail at any point, you wouldn't just be ending your own career. You might be setting back opportunities for other women for years to come. Jessica was quiet for a moment, considering the weight of what Sarah was telling her. Master Chief, I didn't come here to be a symbol or to make a political statement. I came here because I want to serve my country at the highest level possible. But if my being here can open doors for other qualified women, then I'm willing to accept that responsibility. Sarah nodded. She had hoped Jessica would say something like that. Tomorrow morning, you're going to meet with Admiral Patterson. He wants to evaluate you personally before making any decisions. Be honest with him about everything. Don't try to tell him what you think he wants to hear. Just be yourself, and let your abilities speak for themselves. Yes, Master Chief. And Johnson, one more thing. Whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to know that I believe you've already proven you belong here. Now we just need to convince everyone else. The next morning arrived gray and overcast, with a cool wind blowing in from the ocean. Jessica arrived at Admiral Patterson's office precisely on time, her dress uniform immaculate, and her bearing confident despite the circumstances. Admiral Patterson studied her for several minutes before speaking. Recruit Johnson, Master Chief Rodriguez has told me quite a bit about your performance during training. She's also shared details about your previous military service. What I want to know is why you chose to deceive us about your identity. Sir, I didn't see it as deception. I saw it as focusing on what was relevant: my qualifications, my abilities, and my commitment to serving my country. I believed, and still believe, that my gender has nothing to do with my ability to complete SEAL training successfully. But surely you understand that there are reasons why women haven't been allowed in these programs. Sir, with respect, I think there were assumptions about why women shouldn't be allowed in these programs. I hoped that by proving those assumptions wrong, I might help change the policy. Admiral Patterson leaned back in his chair. What would you say to people who argue that unit cohesion might be affected by having women in combat roles? Sir, I would say that I've served in combat alongside male soldiers, and I've never seen unit cohesion suffer when everyone was focused on the mission. I would also point out that many of our allied forces have successfully integrated women into their special forces units without any decrease in effectiveness. The interview continued for over an hour, with Admiral Patterson asking tough questions about everything from physical standards to operational security. Jessica answered each question thoughtfully and honestly, never trying to avoid difficult topics or give answers she thought he wanted to hear. Finally, Admiral Patterson stood up. Recruit Johnson, you may return to training. I'll be making my decision within the next few days. After Jessica left, Admiral Patterson called Sarah back into his office. Master Chief, that is a very impressive young woman. Her test scores, her combat experience, and her performance during training all suggest that she could be an exceptional SEAL. Yes, sir. However, the policy implications of what we're discussing are enormous. If we move forward with this, we'll be stepping into territory that could have consequences far beyond this training program. I understand that, sir. But I also think we have an opportunity to lead rather than simply react to changing policies. Admiral Patterson walked to his window again, looking out at the ocean where SEAL candidates were running training exercises. Master Chief, I've made my decision. We're going to allow Recruit Johnson to complete the training program under a special classified protocol. She'll continue as she has been, but with additional monitoring and documentation. If she successfully completes all phases of training, we'll present our findings to the Pentagon and recommend policy changes. Sarah felt a surge of relief and excitement. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me yet. This is just the beginning of what will likely be a very complex process. And remember, if this fails, the responsibility falls on both of us. As Sarah left Admiral Patterson's office, She realized that they had just taken the first step toward changing one of the military's most long-standing policies. But she also knew that the real challenges were just beginning. Jessica would have to continue performing at the highest level while dealing with the additional pressure of being a test case. Sarah would have to carefully manage the situation to ensure that security was maintained and that Jessica received fair treatment. And somewhere out there, other women who had dreamed of serving in special forces might finally get their chance to prove themselves. But first, Jessica had to survive the most challenging phases of SEAL training still ahead, and Sarah had to figure out how to protect her while gathering the evidence they would need to change military policy forever. 3 months later, Jessica had successfully completed almost every phase of SEAL training. Her performance had been extraordinary by any measure. She had finished first in underwater navigation, second in hand-to-hand combat, and had set new records in marksmanship that would likely stand for years. But the most challenging test was still ahead. The final live fire exercise that would determine whether she and the other remaining candidates would earn the right to become Navy SEALs. Sarah stood in the command center, watching multiple video screens that showed different angles of the training area. This exercise was designed to simulate a real hostage rescue mission, with live ammunition, moving targets, and split-second decisions that could mean the difference between success and failure. The remaining 12 candidates had been divided into 2 teams. Jessica was leading one team, while the other was led by recruit Thompson, a former Marine who had consistently performed well throughout training. "Remember," Sarah spoke into her radio, "this is a live fire exercise. Real bullets, real consequences. Every decision you make must be perfect." The scenario was complex. Armed hostiles had taken control of a building containing 5 civilian hostages. Each team would approach from a different direction, coordinate their assault, and neutralize the threats, while ensuring the safety of all hostages. Sarah watched as both teams moved into position. Jessica's team approached from the north, using hand signals to communicate as they advanced toward the building. Thompson's team took the southern approach, moving with equal precision. Everything was going according to plan until the exercise took an unexpected turn. "Contact," came a voice over the radio. "We have actual hostiles in the area. This is not part of the exercise. Repeat. We have real threats on the training ground." Oh. Sarah's blood went cold. Somehow, actual armed intruders had entered the training area. This was supposed to be one of the most secure military installations in the country. But someone had breached their perimeter. "All teams, hold your positions," Admiral Patterson's voice crackled over the radio from his observation post. "We're assessing the situation," but the situation was already escalating beyond their control. Through the video screens, Sarah could see 3 armed figures moving toward the building where the exercise was taking place. They were wearing military-style clothing but carrying weapons that weren't standard military issue. Worse, they appeared to be heading directly toward the area where Jessica's team was positioned. "Master Chief," came Jessica's voice over the radio, calm and steady despite the chaos. "I have eyes on 3 hostile subjects approaching from the east. They're armed and moving with tactical precision. This doesn't look like a training accident." Sarah realized with growing alarm that this might be an actual attack on the training facility. Whether it was terrorism, espionage, or something else entirely, the lives of her trainees were now in real danger. "All candidates are to withdraw immediately to safe positions," Sarah commanded over the radio, but Jessica's response surprised everyone. "Master Chief, the hostiles are between us and our withdrawal route. If we try to retreat now, we'll be caught in the open with no cover. I recommend we proceed with the exercise building as our defensive position." Admiral Patterson's voice cut through the radio chatter. "Johnson, you are a trainee, not a mission commander. Follow orders and withdraw." "Sir, with respect, tactical situation dictates our best chance of survival is to use the building for cover and establish a defensive perimeter." "My team agrees." Sarah found herself facing an impossible decision. Military protocol demanded that the trainees follow orders and withdraw. But Jessica's tactical assessment was correct. The intruders had positioned themselves in a way that made retreat extremely dangerous. "Master Chief, Thompson's voice joined the conversation from his position on the south side of the building. Johnson's right. We're in a crossfire situation. The building is our best option for cover. Sarah looked at Admiral Patterson, who was standing next to her in the command center. He nodded grimly. All teams, proceed to the building and establish defensive positions. This is now a real engagement. Weapons are authorized for use against hostile targets. What followed was the most intense hour of combat any of them had ever experienced. The three intruders were clearly professionals. They moved with military precision and used advanced tactics as they attempted to assault the building. But they had underestimated the quality of the SEAL trainees they were facing. Jessica positioned her team to cover the northern and eastern approaches, while Thompson's team covered the south and west. Together, they created an overlapping field of fire that made it nearly impossible for the intruders to advance. "Contact north," Jessica called out, as one of the intruders attempted to rush her position. The sharp crack of rifle fire echoed across the training ground. Through her binoculars, Sarah watched as Jessica engaged the target with the same precision she had shown throughout training. The intruder went down immediately, neutralized by a single, perfectly placed shot. "One hostile down," Jessica reported, her voice still calm and professional. "Two remaining." Moving toward the eastern wall, the remaining intruders seemed to realize they were facing more resistance than they had expected. They regrouped and attempted a coordinated assault on Thompson's position. "They're trying to flank us from the south," Thompson called out. "I need covering fire." Without hesitation, Jessica repositioned her team to provide support. "Thompson, we have you covered. Move your team to better positions." What Sarah witnessed over the next few minutes was a masterclass in small unit tactics. Jessica coordinated both teams, directing fire, calling out target positions, and making tactical decisions that kept everyone alive while systematically eliminating the threats. The second intruder was neutralized by combined fire from both teams. The third, realizing the situation was hopeless, attempted to escape, but was captured by base security forces who had finally arrived on the scene. When the smoke cleared and the all-clear signal was given, Sarah and Admiral Patterson rushed to the scene to check on their trainees. All 12 candidates were unharmed. More importantly, they had successfully defended their position against a real attack by trained professionals. "Johnson," Admiral Patterson called out as he approached Jessica's team. "Front and center." Jessica jogged over and stood at attention. "Yes, sir. I want a full tactical debrief on how you handled that engagement." For the next 30 minutes, Jessica walked Admiral Patterson and the other instructors through every decision she had made during the firefight. Her analysis was thorough, professional, and demonstrated a level of tactical thinking that impressed even the most experienced military leaders present. "Your coordination between the two teams probably saved lives today," Admiral Patterson told her when she finished her report. That was exceptional leadership under extreme pressure. But the most significant moment came later that evening, during the formal debrief in the main conference room. "Ladies and gentlemen," Admiral Patterson announced to the assembled group of instructors and candidates, "today's events have given us an opportunity to observe combat performance under actual hostile conditions. What we witnessed was exceptional courage, tactical skill, and leadership from all participants." He paused and looked directly at Jessica. "However, I have a particular commendation for the leadership demonstrated by Recruit Johnson during today's engagement. Johnson took command of a complex tactical situation, made decisions that protected the lives of fellow service members, and demonstrated the kind of combat leadership we hope to see from our most elite personnel." Sarah felt a surge of pride as she watched Jessica receive recognition for her actions. But she also knew that this moment represented something much larger than a single training exercise. "Which brings me to an important announcement," Admiral Patterson continued. "Based on the performance we observed today, and throughout the entire training program, I am recommending that all 12 remaining candidates be advanced to the final phase of SEAL certification." The room erupted in quiet celebration, as the candidates realized they had achieved what few people ever could: successful completion of one of the world's most demanding military training programs. But Admiral Patterson wasn't finished. "I'm also announcing that effective immediately, this training program will be expanded to include qualified candidates regardless of gender. Today's events have demonstrated conclusively that combat effectiveness has nothing to do with whether someone is male or female, and everything to do with skill, courage, and dedication. Sarah looked at Jessica, who was standing at attention with tears in her eyes. She had not only achieved her personal goal of becoming a SEAL, but had opened the door for other women to follow in her footsteps. After the formal ceremony ended, Sarah approached Jessica in the hallway. "How does it feel to have changed military policy forever?" Sarah asked. Jessica shook her head. "I didn't change anything, Master Chief. I just proved what should have been obvious all along. There are qualified people who want to serve their country at the highest level, and their gender shouldn't matter." "You're right," Sarah agreed. "But it took someone with your abilities and determination to prove that point. Not everyone could have done what you did. Actually, I think many women could do what I did, if they were given the chance. That's what I hope comes out of this. Not that I'm special, but that the opportunity should be available to anyone who can meet the standards." 6 months later, Sarah stood on the same training ground where Jessica's story had begun, watching a new group of SEAL candidates. This time, the group included 4 women who had earned their places through the same demanding selection process as their male counterparts. Jessica was now serving as a Navy SEAL with a Special Operations Unit, and her performance reports continued to be exceptional. More importantly, her success had inspired other women to pursue careers in special forces, and military policies were continuing to evolve. Sarah often thought about that night in the weapons storage room when she had first discovered Jessica's secret. She had made a decision that could have ended both of their careers, but instead had led to meaningful change that would benefit the military for generations to come. The final report on Jessica's training performance, which Sarah had helped write, concluded with these words: "The question should never have been whether women can succeed in special forces training. The question should have been why we waited so long to give qualified women the opportunity to prove themselves." As Sarah watched the new group of candidates struggling through their first day of training, she smiled. Some of them would not make it through the program. Others would discover strength and abilities they never knew they possessed. But all of them, regardless of gender, would have the same opportunity to serve their country at the highest level possible. That, Sarah realized, was what true equality looked like. Not lowering standards or making exceptions, but ensuring that everyone who met the standards had the chance to prove themselves. And it had all started with a simple question: who fired the bullet? The answer, it turned out, was someone who had earned the right to be there, regardless of what anyone else might have assumed about her.